Hi, this is my video tutorial for the Best Mum or Best Mom, depending on which country you're in, mug rug. It's to accompany the written tutorial that you will find in with my design. I hope you find this video tutorial helpful, especially those of you that have never made an in the hoop mug rug before. We start with putting tearaway or the Solvay type water soluble stabilizer in the hoop. And what I mean by the fabric type, it's this type of stabilizer, the water soluble, not the plastic one, because that just doesn't hold. So you can use that or just the normal tearaway. I am using tearaway for this purpose. So we'll do that. Start with the tearaway stabilizer, and once you've loaded your design into your computer or onto your machine, depending on what you have, you then want to stitch the first block, which is going to stitch the placement for the fabric. So we start the machine off and we carry on until that's stitched out, and then I'll come back. Okay, I'm not sure you can see very well, and I do apologise. I've stitched out the placement lines, but I've done it in a very pale pink. So not very clever of me, but it basically has the stitching there. And what I've done is I'm going to use a white fabric for the base of my design, but I want a quilted effect on the lettering. So I'm actually going to use some felt to put on first, and then the white fabric on top. And I'm going to use temporary spray adhesive between each layer. So I'm going to put temporary spray adhesive on there and put the felt on, temporary spray adhesive and put that on, the fabric on, and then stitch the tack down line, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, that's what we'll do next. Okay, it's at this point you have a choice. You can either stitch the tack down line for the white fabric with the felt underneath. And I also should add that you don't need to put the felt on at this point. You can just add the fabric, the base fabric that you're going to use. As I say, it's because I wanted a quilted effect on the lettering. Here's a test one I did earlier. And I did it where I added the felt first, and I don't know if you can actually see, but it's given a padded effect. As I say, this was a test one, so please ignore the wonky colours. So this is the effect that I actually want. If you don't want that, then leave the felt off. You can also use non-fusible batting with temporary spray adhesive or fusible batting. I've chosen to use felt. I do that because it's cheaper than using batting when I'm doing testing. Sometimes I like to have a much more solid, thicker mug rug, so I actually use one layer of felt and one layer of batting, fusible batting. So I just see how I feel, but generally if it's a gift, I do the 2 layers. If it's for myself, I tend to just do the 1. So that's, like I say, I tested it earlier with different coloured fabrics. I actually really liked this fabric, and I'm choosing to do the next test with just that coloured fabric with different coloured stitching around the edge, just to see how that looks. So that's what I'm doing. So because I'm going to only do the 1 layer of fabric, the 1 colour of fabric I mean, I've got my fabric here that I'm using, and I have lined it fully with Heat and Bond Light, which I'm now going to peel off. So you've got your shiny side. At this stage, I'm not going to iron it on. I'm actually just going to lay it on top of the white fabric without any spray adhesive. I don't want to have it tacked down at all. And that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to stitch the tack down. Now I could, if I wanted to, use some masking tape to keep the fabric nice and flat. But because I know the design's not going to go right to the edges, I'm going to just use my fingers just to keep the fabric nice and taut, making sure that I don't stitch my fingers in the process. So I'm going to stitch that, and then I shall come back to you shortly. Okay, I finished stitching the lettering out. I don't know if you can see close up or not, because again I've used pale pink thread. But the lettering's been stitched out, and now I'm going to trim in between where I need to, just trimming the top layer of fabric, not the white obviously, because that's the base, that's what's going to be showing up in all the gaps. So that's what I will do, and I will come back to you. I also wanted to show you what I did to get the different layers of fabric, which is the choice you will have in the file. So when we come back, I will just skirt over showing you what I did to get the different layers step by step. But for this purpose, I'm going to go away and trim it and then come back. Okay, so I've trimmed around all the lettering in the hoop, and I've gone in between all the layers because there are going to be gaps, as there are here, of white fabric. So I wanted to make sure that I trimmed everywhere. Now, I did accidentally cut here. I don't know if you can see it, but I trimmed there by accident. As it happens, it's not the end of the world. It's going to be covered with stitching, and it's not going to anyone. But had I cut somewhere important, it would have been game over, start again. So I've done that with these letters, and I'm just going to iron them down now, press them down so that the heat and bond is sealed, so that way the design isn't going to move, that the lettering isn't going to move. So that's that done. But what I wanted to show you, what I did beforehand with this one, was to get the different letters in the different fabrics. What I did was I printed the design off. So I had all the letters, and I cut them all out, and I went a quarter of the way into the stitching. If I cut around the outside edge of the stitching, the fabric would be at risk of poking out of the satin stitching when I stitched it. So just do go in a slight amount. Cut all the letters out, and then I got my fabric colours, and I put heat and bond light on one side and left the paper backing on. And say that's the front of the fabric where the pattern is. I laid it face down, and then I turned the letter face down. If you do it this way, when you come to put it on, you've got to turn it over, and it's going to be wrong. If there's a thicker side, which there is here, that would be like that, and it's not going to be right. So do make sure the letters you place face down on the back of the fabric. I drew around the edges and I cut them out, and then I peeled the backing off all of them. And I did that with all the different coloured fabrics. And then what I did was I got the hoop and I laid, for example, the bee. I laid the fabric that had the bee onto the hoop. And I did cut the holes out, although on the bee it doesn't actually matter because they do get pretty covered. But it does, on the mom one, the American version, the O, does have a hole in. So it's important to cut that one out. But yeah, so I laid the bee down and I got it right where I wanted it, knowing that it was going to be in the right place, and ironed it down. And then I carried on doing all the letters with the different fabrics. And that brought me to where I am now. So we're back to the same situation. So that's the only difference I did. So you have that choice to do that in the design. I'm going to now stitch the outer edging of the pattern. I've done a design shape of the pattern where it needs to go around the edges, where I need to trim the excess here and underneath. So I've done a design of the lettering for you to cut out. So I'm going to stitch that first, and then I'm going to trim around. And sorry, at the same time, I'm also going to put the back fabric on. And this is where you'd also put the extra batting on, or an extra layer of felt if you wanted it. So you do just the fabric, or felt, or batting and fabric. Obviously, if you're using fusible batting, fuse it to the fabric first, and then lay the batting and fabric down. So then I would either use a temporary spray adhesive to stick that all down here, or use masking tape around the edges. Then I would put this back into the hoop, then stitch around the edging. So that's the order you want to do it in. So the first thing to do now, after you've trimmed all the lettering, is put the backing fabric on, return to the hoop and stitch the outer edging of the design. Then trim both top and underneath. So you've got to trim both of them. And then I shall come back when that's done to show you where we're at. Apologies, what I wanted to add was that I'm leaving all the letters in one file, one at a time, because if you don't want to print off the letters and do it the way I did it, but you want to do alternate colours, you can basically do like you would with any applique and do one layer of fabric, put it where you want it to be for the bee, stitch the tack down, take it out, trim around the bee, and then do the same with the E for the next piece of fabric and so on. So all the letters are in another file in the file to give you that facility to do individual applique letters. So that you're having the choice of basically 3 different ways that you want to do it. So it's a very versatile design. So I hope that is clear for you and helps you in what I mean. So yeah, so I did forget to say that, and I apologise. I shall be back shortly. I just wanted to pop back and show you the way the outline is on the back, to show you where I'm trimming, and that's how it should look, both front and back. The front I'm not sure you can see really, because it's again like stitching, but it sort of goes down here and up there and so on. Again, I shall be back shortly. Okay, so this is all of it trimmed out, ready to have the satin stitching added. So that's the front and that's the back. So I shall now return to the hoop and do the satin stitching. I shall be doing one colour per letter, a different colour. I shall come back and show you the end result. So there we have it. It's been stitched, it's out of the hoop. That's the back of it, nice and neat. And that's the front of it. And that is my Best Mum mug rug. I hope you enjoy making yours, and I look forward to seeing the results in my groups. Take care and see you again soon. Bye.